James Holloway woke up before sunrise, just as a soft line of gold touched the horizon. The morning air was cold enough to make him pull his coat tighter, but he didn't mind. He had lived on this small ranch for years, and mornings like this were normal, quiet, predictable, and sometimes a little lonely. He stepped outside, listened to the wind moving through the dry grass, and took a deep breath. Today was supposed to be simple. He planned to ride into town, buy a cow, and be back before dark. Nothing more. His ranch needed the cow badly. His only milk cow had grown old, and the lack of fresh milk, butter, and cheese made days feel even longer. James had spent weeks putting a little money aside. He knew exactly how much he could offer and hoped it would be enough. He wasn't a wealthy man. Everything he owned came from years of slow, steady work, fixing his own fences, caring for his animals, tending small crops, and repairing the old cabin he lived in. As he saddled his horse, he paused, feeling the same heaviness he often carried in his chest. Life on the ranch used to feel warmer when his parents were alive. He remembered his mother humming while she cooked, his father telling stories by the fire. Those memories still lived in the house, but they could not keep him company. Since their passing, the ranch had been silent. Some days, it felt too silent. He mounted his horse and began the long ride to the trading settlement. The dusty road stretched ahead, winding through open land dotted with mesquite trees and shrubs. Birds flew in the distance, small and fast, as if racing the wind. James followed their movement for a moment, a small smile touching his lips. Even when life felt heavy, nature still offered tiny reminders of beauty. He rode for almost an hour before the first signs of the settlement appeared, a few wooden buildings, a water well, and thin lines of smoke rising from chimneys. It wasn't a big place, but it was where ranchers and travelers came to buy and trade. It had a blacksmith, a general store, a stable, and a few homes scattered around the edges. Most days it was quiet, but on trading days like this one, the place came alive. As James entered the settlement, he noticed wagons, horses, and people moving about. Men talked loud as they bartered. Women carried baskets or stood near the store window, looking at fabric and supplies. Children ran across the dusty ground, chasing each other and laughing. The sound of life warmed James's chest. He didn't visit often, and the noise felt welcomed. He tied his horse near the trading post and walked toward the livestock area. He could already see a few cows penned up along the fence. Some were thin, some healthy, some calm, and some restless. He studied them carefully. He needed a cow strong enough to give good milk, but gentle enough to handle. He didn't have time or energy to deal with a wild one. Before he reached the cows, something caught his attention. A crowd had formed near the front of the trading post. People stood close together, their voices rising. At first, James thought it was just a loud disagreement over prices, which happened often. But as he walked closer, he realized it was something different. The tone felt sharper, heavier. He stepped around a couple of tall men to see what was happening. In the center of the crowd stood a small Apache family, an older man, a woman who appeared to be his wife, and a young woman who stood slightly behind them. They carried baskets, handmade crafts, and a few animal hides, clearly hoping to trade. The older man was speaking calmly, trying to explain something, but some of the settlers didn't seem willing to listen. James felt a pinch in his chest. He didn't like tension, and he never liked seeing anyone treated unfairly. He watched quietly, unsure if he should step in. It wasn't his business, after all. He had come to buy a cow, not get involved in arguments. Still, he stayed close, not ready to walk away just yet. The older Apache man tried again to explain the price of his goods, using gestures and simple English. The items he offered were good quality: well-made blankets, strong baskets, carefully crafted beadwork. but some settlers acted as if they didn't want to deal with him at all. A few of them muttered things under their breath, and James felt his jaw tighten. The young woman behind the older man kept her head slightly lowered, yet there was something calm and steady about her. Her long dark hair was braided neatly, and her posture showed quiet strength. She didn't look scared or angry, just patient, as if she had seen moments like this before and had learned to endure them without losing her dignity. The argument grew louder. One of the settlers stepped closer to the older man, pointing a finger at him. "I said we're not buying any of this," the man shouted. James felt his stomach tighten. He didn't like shouting. He didn't like threats. The air around the crowd felt tense, as if something might snap at any moment. Without fully thinking, James stepped forward. "There's no need to yell," he said in a steady, polite voice. His words made the crowd pause. The man who had been shouting turned toward James. "And who asked you?" the man snapped. "No one," James answered calmly. "But there's still no need to shout." The yelling man stared at him for a moment, then, realizing the crowd's attention had shifted, stepped back with a huff. The tension eased just a little. The older Apache man nodded at James in quiet gratitude. James nodded back, feeling a bit embarrassed, but also relieved that the situation had calmed. With the tension broken, the crowd slowly dispersed. Some people walked away, shaking their heads. Others returned to their trading. James remained where he was for a moment, unsure what to say next. He turned toward the older Apache man, intending to offer a friendly word, but the man was already packing up his goods. He appeared tired, as if moments like these had happened too many times. James stepped back, thinking the moment had passed. He turned toward the livestock pens again, reminding himself he had come for a cow. He didn't want to get involved in anything complicated. His life was simple and quiet, and he preferred it that way. Yet as he walked toward the animals, he couldn't stop thinking about the young woman's calm expression. Something about it stayed with him, like a soft echo in his mind. At the fence, he began studying the cows again, pretending to focus on their size and health. But his mind drifted. He had helped a stranger today, and though the act was small, it had stirred something inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. The truth was, he didn't often feel connected to anyone. He lived between long stretches of silence and long days alone. But in that moment, stepping in to defend someone, he felt a flicker of purpose. He shook the thought away and leaned on the fence. "A good cow," he muttered to himself. "That's all I need." He tried to sound confident, but his voice carried a hint of uncertainty. He wondered whether he had enough money, whether he would make the right choice, whether today would finally go smoothly. But even as he watched the cows, he felt a strange sense that the day would not be simple at all. Something in the air felt different, almost like the quiet before a storm. Not dangerous, but life-changing. He didn't know why he felt that way. He didn't know that his life was already shifting course. All he knew was that he had come for a cow. And yet, something far more unexpected was already waiting for him, moving quietly toward him like a change he could not see but would soon understand. James stayed near the livestock fence for a few minutes, letting the noise of the settlement settle around him. He kept telling himself to focus on choosing a cow, but his mind kept drifting back to the scene by the trading post. The young Apache woman's calm eyes stayed in his thoughts, steady and clear like still water. He didn't know her name, yet somehow he felt as if he had known that quiet strength before, somewhere deep in a memory he couldn't place. He shook his head and looked again at the cows. Most were grazing lazily, swishing their tails back and forth. A few lifted their heads and stared at him with mild curiosity. James crossed his arms and leaned on the fence, pretending to study them carefully. But inside, he felt distracted, almost unsettled by how quickly the day had shifted. The sound of footsteps approached behind him. Slow, light steps. Someone was walking with purpose, but not in a hurry. When James turned, he saw the older Apache man and the young woman from earlier standing a few feet away. The man's expression was calm, but his eyes held a quiet seriousness. The young woman's gaze met James's for a second, steady but gentle, before she looked toward the ground politely. James straightened, unsure of what to say. He had only stepped in to calm things down. He hadn't expected anyone to follow him. The older man spoke in simple, careful English. "You helped us. Thank you." James nodded. It was nothing. People shouldn't shout like that. The man gave a small smile. Old and tired, but sincere. "Still, you stood with fairness. Not many do that." James didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to being praised. He had always seen himself as ordinary, just a rancher trying to get through each day. He rubbed the back of his neck, suddenly feeling awkward. The young woman lifted her eyes again, watching him quietly. Her expression was unreadable, not cold, not overly warm, just thoughtful. James felt a strange flutter in his chest, one he tried to ignore. He wasn't used to being noticed, especially not by someone with such calm, steady presence. The older man continued. "We are from a small group staying near the river. We came to trade for supplies. It has been hard." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Times have changed. People do not see us the same." James understood more than he liked to admit. He had seen how the world had grown divided, how fear and misunderstanding created distance between people who had once lived side by side. He didn't like it, but he didn't know how to fix it either. "I'm sorry you were treated like that," James said softly. The older man nodded. "Your kindness matters." Then he stepped aside slightly, gesturing toward the young woman. "This is my daughter, Ayanna." Her name settled in the air gently. Ayanna. It sounded like something carried by the wind. James offered a small smile. "It's nice to meet you." Ayanna gave a polite nod. "Thank you. For earlier," she said, her voice soft but steady. Her English was careful yet clear, each word chosen with respect. "You're welcome," James replied, feeling strangely nervous. For a moment, the three stood quietly. The wind brushed past them, carrying the scent of dust and distant pine. The settlement noise moved around them. Voices, horses, laughter, but in that small circle of space, time felt slower, quieter. The older man reached into the basket he carried and pulled out a small woven bracelet. It was made of colored fibers, simple yet beautifully crafted. "A gift," he said, "to show respect for your action." James blinked, surprised. I can't take this. I didn't do anything special." The man insisted gently. "Please. A kind act deserves thanks." James hesitated, then slowly accepted the bracelet. It felt warm from being held, and he studied the pattern. Careful loops, small beads, colors that reminded him of sunrise and earth. It was more meaningful than he knew how to say. "Thank you," he said quietly. Ayanna watched him with a faint smile, small but real. Her eyes held a warmth that made James's heartbeat thump a little harder. He quickly turned his gaze back toward the bracelet, afraid she might notice the way he reacted. The older man shifted the basket again. "We must return to our group soon. Trading was less successful today." James felt a tug of concern. "Did you get what you needed?" The man shook his head lightly. "Not all, but we will manage." Ayanna stepped forward slightly. "We found some things. Not everything, but we will not worry." Her voice carried calm acceptance, as if she had learned long ago to face hardship with patience rather than fear. James wished he could do more, but he didn't know what would be appropriate. He didn't want to offend them or seem like he was offering charity. Still, something inside him said he wasn't ready to let the moment end. "If you need something," he said carefully, "maybe I can help a little. I don't have much, but—" He stopped, unsure if he was overstepping. But instead of offense, the older man looked touched. "Your heart is good," he said softly. "But you have already done enough for today." James opened his mouth to respond, but another voice interrupted, a trader calling to buyers about cows for sale. The world around them moved again, loud and busy, reminding James why he had come. He glanced between the Apache family and the livestock pen. His day's task was still waiting, and yet something felt different, as if a new path had quietly opened right beside his old one. The older man noticed his hesitation. "You came to trade too," he said kindly. "We will not keep you." Ayanna stepped back beside her father, but she continued to watch James with that same thoughtful calm. Her eyes held a quiet question, though she said nothing. Before they left, the older man spoke once more. "Not all journeys begin with what we expect. Sometimes they begin with a simple act of kindness." James felt those words settle deep inside him, like a seed planted quietly in the ground. Ayanna gave him one last look, soft, steady, almost searching, before she turned to follow her parents across the settlement. James watched them walk away, feeling an unexpected pull in his chest, as if a piece of him was slowly drifting with them. When they were out of sight, James finally turned back toward the cows, though his mind was far from focused. He leaned on the fence again, but the cows now felt like a background detail, something small compared to the strange shift happening in his heart. He rubbed the woven bracelet between his fingers, feeling the texture, the care in its making. It was just a simple gift, but it felt heavy with meaning. James had always believed he knew what each day would bring: sunrise, work, chores, loneliness, sleep. But today felt different. Something was moving around him, something quiet but strong, like a new wind rising from a direction he had never looked before. He took a slow breath. He had come to buy a cow. That was the plan. That was supposed to be the beginning and end of the day. But the calm strength in Ayanna's eyes stayed with him, refusing to fade. And deep inside him, James felt a small, surprising truth forming. This day was not going to end the way he had imagined. Something new had already begun. James spent a long time standing by the cattle fence, but his thoughts were far from livestock. Every time he tried to focus on the cows, examining their size, checking their calmness, comparing their strength, his mind kept drifting back to the older Apache man's words and Ayanna's calm gaze. It felt as though the morning had quietly opened a door he didn't know existed. He finally chose a cow, paid the trader, and arranged for the animal to be tied to his horse's lead so he could take her home later. But even after the purchase was finished, he didn't ride away. Something in the air made him linger, as if the day still had something waiting for him. He wasn't wrong. As the sun moved higher, warming the dusty settlement, James decided to buy a few supplies from the general store before heading back to the ranch. He walked slowly, still lost in thought, still rubbing the small woven bracelet the Apache elder had given him. The pattern felt warm and meaningful. It reminded him of gentle hands and quiet strength. Inside the general store, he gathered flour, salt, and a few necessary items. The shop wasn't crowded, but there were enough customers to fill the room with soft conversation and movement. James tried to keep his mind on his task, but he couldn't shake the strange feeling that something more was coming. He didn't have to wait long. As James paid for his supplies, he heard the door of the store open behind him. Soft footsteps entered, lighter and quieter than the usual boots of the settlers. When he turned slightly, he saw Ayanna standing in the doorway, holding a small bundle of her family's baskets. Her father wasn't with her. She had come alone. She scanned the store, her eyes stopping when she saw James. There was a look in them, gentle, almost relieved, that made his heart beat faster. He stepped aside so she could approach the counter. The storekeeper, an older man with a white beard, looked up at her with caution but not unkindness. Ayanna placed her baskets on the counter, offering them for trade. The shopkeeper examined the baskets, testing their strength, admiring the careful weaving. He nodded with respect. "These are well made," he said. "Better than most I see." Ayanna dipped her head politely. "Thank you." While she and the shopkeeper spoke, James felt caught between staying and leaving. Part of him felt shy, unsure if he should approach her again, but another part, stronger, knew he wasn't ready to walk away. After finishing her trade, Ayanna stepped aside to pack the small items she had received. James moved a little closer, not wanting to intrude but also unable to stay away. "Hi," he said softly. Ayanna looked up, a small smile touching her lips. "Hello?" "You came back for more supplies?" he asked. "Yes," she replied. "My father asked me to trade the last of our baskets." She paused, studying him with thoughtful eyes. "Did you find your cow?" He chuckled lightly. "I did. Not sure she's the best, but she'll do." Ayanna nodded gently. A good cow is important. There was something peaceful about talking to her, something calm and warm that eased the heaviness in James's chest. He wanted to say more, to ask more, but he didn't know how to begin. They stepped outside together, not by plan but by quiet understanding. The sun was bright, and the wind carried the scent of dry grass and smoke from distant chimneys. Ayanna held her small bundle of supplies against her chest. She seemed ready to leave, yet she didn't walk away immediately. Instead, she looked at James with a depth that felt almost like curiosity. "You are alone?" she asked softly. James nodded. "Yes. Have been for some years now." She listened carefully, not with pity, but with understanding. "It can be hard," she said, "when the days are quiet and there is no one to share them with." James blinked, surprised by how accurately she had read him. "It is," he said quietly. "Sometimes too quiet." Ayanna lowered her gaze for a moment, as if considering something important. Then looked back at him. "In my family," she said, "we believe no one should walk through life alone. Even in hard times, even when the world changes, we try to stay together." Her words touched something deep inside James, something fragile and long ignored. He opened his mouth to respond, but just then, the older Apache man, Ayanna's father, approached from across the settlement. His steps were slow but purposeful. James straightened, although he didn't feel nervous, only curious. The elder greeted his daughter first, speaking softly in their native language. Then he turned his attention to James, his eyes warm, yet serious. "You stayed," the man said. "Yes," James replied honestly. "I had some more supplies to buy." The elder nodded, but his expression suggested he had something deeper on his mind. He looked between Ayanna and James as if he were measuring something unseen. Then he spoke, his voice steady and calm. "You helped us today. You showed fairness and respect. In our way, that means something." The man paused. "Very few offer such kindness." James shifted, uncomfortable with the praise. Anyone should have done the same. "But not everyone does," the elder replied gently. The air around them seemed to grow still, as though the wind knew something important was about to be said. The elder took a quiet breath. "Our family has lost much in the past years. Our home changed. Our people scattered. We search for a place where we can live in peace." He glanced at Ayanna, then back at James. "We need safety. We need a bond that can protect our future." James listened carefully, not fully understanding yet. Then the elder spoke the words that would change everything. "I offer you my daughter." James felt his heart stop. Ayanna lowered her gaze but did not step away. She stood quietly, her hands clasped together, her expression calm but thoughtful. She did not look frightened or surprised. It seemed she already knew what her father was going to say. The elder continued, speaking with deep sincerity. "Not as a burden, not as a trade for goods, but as a promise of trust and peace between families. You have a good heart. Ayanna sees it, and we believe you can offer her a safe future." James's mouth went dry. His mind spun. This morning he had woken with nothing more in his thoughts than buying a cow. And now he was being offered a bride, a real person, a woman with depth, strength, and quiet beauty. I don't know what to say," James whispered. Ayanna finally raised her eyes. She stepped closer, her voice soft but clear. "I choose this too," she said. "My father does not decide alone." She looked into James's eyes with honesty that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I saw kindness in you, respect, something steady. I believe you are someone I can walk beside." James felt a warm wave rise inside him, filling the emptiness he had carried for years. He looked at her, really looked, her calm presence, her quiet courage, the peaceful way she faced the world despite its challenges. He felt something shift inside him, something gentle, something new. "I care about doing what's right," James said slowly. "But are you sure? You don't know me?" Ayanna smiled softly. "Sometimes the heart knows before the mind understands." Her words settled deep into him. The elder stepped forward. "If you accept, we will join your home. We will help your land grow. We will build a future together." James closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. This was nothing he expected, nothing he planned. But the loneliness he had felt for so long flickered in the presence of this possibility. The thought of a home filled with voices again. The idea of partnership, warmth, purpose. He looked at Ayanna. "I would like that," he said quietly, "if you truly wish it." Ayanna nodded, her eyes shining with gentle certainty. The elder placed a hand on James's shoulder, a gesture of trust. "Then today is a new beginning." As the sun warmed their faces, James realized something remarkable. He had come to this settlement to buy a cow. Instead, he had been given a chance for a family, for peace, for love, and for a future he had never dared imagine. The sun was dipping lower in the sky by the time James finished speaking with Ayanna and her father. The entire moment felt unreal, as if the day had quietly turned into a dream he had not prepared for. His thoughts spun in slow circles, gentle, hopeful, but uncertain. He had not planned for anything like this. He had come to buy a cow. That was all. Yet somehow, life had placed something far more meaningful before him. Ayanna and her parents returned briefly to gather their belongings, promising to meet him near the edge of the settlement when they were ready. James waited near his horse, feeling both nervous and strangely calm at the same time. His horse flicked its ears, sensing his unusual stillness. The cow he had purchased earlier stood quietly behind him, chewing on a patch of dry grass. The world looked familiar, but everything felt new. As he waited, a few settlers passed by, giving James curious glances. One man tipped his hat politely, but another frowned, shaking his head slightly. James could almost hear the thoughts behind those looks. News traveled fast in small places like this, and the scene earlier with the Apache family had not gone unnoticed. People were already forming opinions. Some would accept it quietly, others would not. But James stood straight, refusing to let doubt cloud his heart. He had made his choice, carefully, honestly, and with respect. Ayanna had chosen it too. That mattered more than the whispers of strangers. Soon, he saw the Apache family walking toward him. They carried only a few items: woven blankets, baskets, a bundle of clothes, a small wooden box tied with rope. Ayanna walked between her parents, her steps calm and steady. Her eyes met James's as she approached, offering a gentle nod that eased the tightness in his chest. "I hope the journey is not too long," Ayanna's father said as they reached him. "It's a bit of a ride," James admitted, "but we'll take it slow." He helped secure their belongings to the horse. Ayanna, graceful even in simple movements, tied one of the baskets with careful knots. Her fingers worked with quiet skill, and James found himself watching her with admiration. She didn't rush. She didn't seem afraid. She carried herself with a peace that softened the world around her. When everything was ready, James mounted his horse, and Ayanna and her parents walked beside him. They moved away from the settlement, following the long road that led toward the open land. The sun painted the sky in warm colors: gold, orange, soft pink. The shadows stretched behind them like long, quiet reminders of the day they were leaving behind. The land slowly changed as they traveled. The sound of the settlement faded, replaced by the rustle of dry grass and the songs of birds settling down for the evening. The world felt wider out here, calmer. The wind brushed across their faces, carrying the scent of cedar and dust. James spoke softly as they walked. "My ranch is small," he said, "but the land is good. There's a well, a barn that still needs repairs. A house that could use more warmth." Ayanna listened closely. "A home is not made only by wood or stone," she said gently. "It is made by the hearts inside it." Her words brought a soft warmth to James's chest. He nodded slowly, touched by the honesty in her voice. They traveled for nearly 2 hours before reaching the edge of James's property. The sun was sinking lower, but there was still enough light to see the rolling land ahead. The horses moved quietly, and the cow followed without trouble. When the ranch finally came into view, James felt a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. The house was small and simple. The barn leaned slightly to one side. The fences had gaps he meant to fix but never found the time for. The fields stretched wide but needed more care to grow strong again. Still, it was his home, and now he was welcoming 3 new lives into it. "This is it," he said quietly. Ayanna looked at the house with thoughtful eyes. She didn't seem disappointed. Instead, she seemed to study it with gentle acceptance. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering something soft in their native language, and Ayanna nodded. "It is peaceful," she said. "I can feel it." James felt relief wash over him. "I hope you will feel safe here." Her father stepped forward, placing a hand on James's arm. "We will do our part to bring life back to this place," he said. "A home grows with the people who care for it." James nodded gratefully. "I could use the help." As the sky darkened, they began settling in. James guided them into the house. It wasn't large, but it had enough space for them to sleep comfortably. He lit a lamp, filling the room with soft golden light. The shadows on the walls danced gently, and the air felt warmer with more people inside. Ayanna laid out one of their blankets near the window. Her mother began arranging their belongings in a corner. Her father placed the small wooden box on the table and began examining the worn hinges, as if planning to repair it later. James grabbed a few extra blankets from his storage and offered them. "These are old," he said shyly, "but they're warm." Ayanna accepted one, brushing her fingers across the fabric. "Thank you." As they worked, a soft calm settled over the house, different from the silence James used to live in. This calm had warmth, breath, and presence. it no longer felt empty. The sound of quiet voices, gentle movements, and shared purpose filled the space like a soft melody. When they finished unpacking, James stepped outside to check on the animals and make sure the cow was secured for the night. Ayanna followed him, walking lightly over the soft ground. The sky above them was darkening into deep blue, sprinkled with stars. "You helped your parents without them asking," James said as they approached the barn. "You really care about them." Ayanna smiled softly. "Family is important. We take care of each other." James nodded. "I used to have that, before my parents passed away." Ayanna looked at him gently. "Their love still lives in you," she said. "It shows in how you treat others." James felt emotion rise in his chest, a quiet ache mixed with warmth. "I try my best." "You do more than try," Ayanna said. "You act with respect. That matters." They reached the barn, and James checked the door, tightening a loose hinge. Ayanna stood beside him, handing him a piece of rope to secure the latch. Their hands brushed lightly, just for a moment. The touch was soft, accidental, but it lingered in both their hearts. As they walked back toward the house, the stars spread wide above them, bright and peaceful. The soft glow from the windows made the ranch look warmer than James had seen in years. When they reached the door, Ayanna paused and looked at him with gentle honesty. "Today changed my path," she said, "but I am not afraid. I feel this is where I am meant to be." James took a slow breath. "I feel the same, even if I don't understand it all yet." Ayanna nodded. "We will understand together." Her words wrapped around him like a soft blanket, warm, calm, full of hope. Inside the house, her parents were settling down for the night. The soft glow of the lamp made the room feel safe. James stepped in, closing the door behind them. As he looked at the family resting in his once-empty home, he realized something important. He was no longer alone. The ranch no longer echoed with silence. It carried voices, presence, and the beginnings of something beautiful. But even as warmth spread through his chest, he knew challenges would come. Not everyone would understand. Not everyone would accept their bond. Some would question, some would judge. Still, as he looked at Ayanna, at her calm and steady presence, his heart whispered something clear. Whatever comes, they will face it together. The next morning, the sky glowed with soft colors, gentle pink, warm orange, and calm blue, slowly spreading across the horizon. James stepped outside quietly, letting the cool morning air touch his face. The ranch felt different now, almost like it had taken a deep breath during the night and woken up brighter. He listened to the quiet sounds around him, the soft clucking of chickens, the gentle steps of the new cow, the wind brushing across the grass. Everything felt alive again. For years, mornings had been still, almost too quiet. But now, when James turned back toward the house, he saw something new. Ayanna stepping outside with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, her long braid falling neatly down her back. The early light made her look peaceful, like she belonged in this place more than anyone ever had. "Good morning," James said softly. Ayanna smiled, a warm and calm smile that made his heart feel lighter. "Good morning." Her parents soon stepped out as well, greeting the day with soft words in their native language. James listened with quiet respect, feeling honored that their voices were now part of his home. He wondered if his parents, wherever they rested now, were watching this new chapter unfold. He hoped they would be proud. They spent the morning walking across the ranch together. James showed them the well, the barn, the small shed near the fields, the pasture that needed repairing, and the garden area where he hoped to grow more vegetables. Ayana listened carefully to everything he explained, sometimes asking questions, sometimes offering simple suggestions. Her father examined the fence posts with a thoughtful expression. "These can be fixed," he said. "Strong wood, but the lines need replacing." He ran his hand over the old wood, then looked at James. "We will help make it strong again." Her mother studied the land near the house. "We can plant here," she said softly. "With enough care, the ground will give good food." James felt a quiet gratitude growing inside him. For so long, he had carried the ranch's weight alone. Now, for the first time, he felt hands beside him. Steady hands, willing hands, hands that wanted to help. It filled him with hope he didn't know he still had. Ayana walked beside him as they returned to the house. "Your land has a gentle spirit," she said. "It just needed people to care for it." James smiled. "I'm glad you're here." Ayana looked at him with warm eyes. "And I am glad you opened your heart to us." Throughout the next few days, they settled into a rhythm, a peaceful, steady rhythm that made the ranch feel like a home full of life. In the mornings, Ayana and her mother cooked simple meals. The smell of warm bread and fresh herbs filled the house in a way James had not experienced in years. He helped carry water from the well, clean tools, and prepare the barn for repairs. Ayana often joined him, walking beside him with quiet strength. Her presence made every task feel lighter. Sometimes they talked, sharing small pieces of their lives. Sometimes they worked in silence, yet even those moments felt warm. There was comfort in simply being near each other. One afternoon, as they repaired a wooden gate, James saw Ayana watching the fields with a thoughtful expression. "What are you thinking?" he asked gently. She turned toward him. "I am thinking about the future," she said. "About how this place will look when the land is green again, when the fences are strong, when the home is full of peace." James felt a soft warmth move through him. "I want that too." "We will build it," Ayana said. "Together." Those words stayed in his heart like a quiet promise. But while peace grew inside the ranch, word began to spread outside it. The settlement was small and people talked. Some were curious. Some were quietly supportive. But some did not understand why a white rancher had welcomed an Apache family into his home. A few neighbors visited, offering polite smiles but unclear expressions. They spoke kindly enough, asking about the land and the cow James had purchased. But their eyes often drifted toward Ayana and her parents with caution. James felt protective, but he remained respectful. He didn't want conflict. He wanted peace. One afternoon, an older rancher named Mr. Collins stopped by. He was friendly but curious, his voice thoughtful but cautious. "I hear you've got new people living here," he said slowly. James nodded. "Yes, they're helping with the ranch." Collins studied him for a moment. "You sure about this? People might talk." James's voice stayed calm. "Let them talk. My home is peaceful. That's what matters." Colin held his gaze, then slowly nodded. "Well, you've always been a good man, James. I hope it works out." After he left, Ayana approached James. "It is all right," she said gently. "Not everyone understands, but time can change hearts." James looked at her, admiration filling him. "I'm not worried," he said. "You and your family belong here. This is your home now, too." Ayana's eyes softened. "Thank you." In the weeks that followed, the ranch slowly transformed. The fences were repaired. The barn stood straighter. The garden began to grow again. Ayana's mother planted herbs that filled the air with sweet smells. Her father carved wooden tools that made chores easier. Ayana helped everywhere, feeding animals, fixing small tasks, preparing meals, and even gathering wild berries with a quiet grace that made James smile every time he watched her. In the evenings, they often sat outside watching the sky fade into deep blue. The stars came out slowly, like soft lights waking from sleep. Ayanna shared stories from her childhood, stories of rivers, mountains, and traditions. James shared memories of his parents and the early days on the ranch. These moments grew into something deeper, a gentle closeness, a trust that wrapped around them like a warm blanket. One quiet evening, as they watched the sky turn silver with moonlight, James spoke softly. "I never expected any of this. I never thought my life could change so much in one day." Ayanna looked at him with calm warmth. "Life brings surprises when the heart is open." He nodded slowly. "You've brought new life to this place? To me?" Ayanna lowered her lashes for a moment, then looked back at him. "You gave me a place where I can be safe," she said. "A future where I can grow. That is a gift." They sat in silence then, a peaceful silence full of unspoken understanding. The ranch became known as a place of quiet harmony. Even those who did not understand at first began to soften when they saw how peacefully the families lived together, how the land grew stronger, how James and Ayanna worked side by side with gentle respect. Time passed, and the ranch continued to bloom. The garden grew full. The fields slowly returned to life. Animals thrived. The house echoed with warm voices instead of silence, and James, who once lived alone in an empty home, now woke each morning to the sound of people he cared about, people who cared about him. One day, as he watched Ayanna place fresh flowers near the window, a realization settled gently into his heart. He had come to the settlement to buy a cow. A simple task, a simple plan. But life had given him something far greater. A partner, a family, a future filled with hope, respect, and quiet love. A future he had never dared to imagine. When Ayanna turned toward him, her eyes full of calm strength, James felt certainty rise within him like a bright sunrise. This life, this peace, this companionship was the true gift he had brought home. And he knew, without needing to speak it aloud, that the future they would build together would be filled with warmth, understanding, and a love that grew gently and steadily, just like the land that blossomed beneath their care. Ayanna stepped closer, her voice soft but full of promise. "Our journey begins here," she said. James smiled. "And we'll walk it together." Their hands touched, warm and steady, and with that simple touch, the future opened before them, bright, peaceful, and full of endless possibility.